ranging discussion covering Syria, U.S. military aid, and the recent violence between Israelis and Palestinians. The administration has set aside any expectation of reaching a two-state solution on Obama's watch, but Prime Minister Netanyahu insists he's still committed to that long-term goal.
We have not given up our hope for peace. We'll never give up our hope for peace.
Netanyahu says the U.S. and Israel face a daunting task as they attempt to roll back the violence now plaguing much of the Middle East. Scott Horsley, NPR News, the White House.
Union leaders have signed off on a tentative contract with automaker Ford. The UAW saying that local plant leaders have overwhelmingly approved the agreement, which is somewhat richer than contracts negotiated with rivals General Motors and Fiat Chrysler. Ford workers now have to agree to sign off on the deal that covers 53,000 workers at 22 U.S. plants. Like contracts at GM and Fiat Chrysler, the pact phases out a two-tier wage structure at Ford plants for the next 8 years. After last week's strong gains, stocks stumbled to start a new trading week. The Dow dropped 179 points to 17,730. The Nasdaq was down 51 points. This is NPR.
This is WNYC at 5:04. I'm Jamie Floyd. A law providing health benefits to September 11 first responders should be made permanent. That's the call from a group of New York lawmakers who gathered at City Hall today. Mayor Bill de Blasio was joined by Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney and Congressman Charles Rangel, who says it's time to make the Zadroga Act permanent.
We are talking about protecting our heroes and making certain that they don't have to constantly come back. Those that are fortunate enough to live through what they've been through and beg and ask for assistance.
The group sent a letter to the House Speaker, Paul Ryan, with signatures of 27 other elected officials. A Queens Assemblyman who helped craft a law to protect nail salon workers has now become one of its staunchest critics. An investigation by the New York Times earlier this year found systematic abuse and exploitation of nail salon workers. The series prompted lawmakers to pass the legislative reforms. But New York Times reporter Sarah Maslanier says Queens Assemblyman Ron Kim, who was the chief author of the law, has now reversed his position, she says, after receiving thousands of dollars in political donations.
The timing isn't coincidental. The minute these things came into play, people started to push back, and Mr. Kim started to receive very significant contributions from the nail salon owners.
But in an interview, Kim told the Times he did not realize that the law would apply only to nail salons. Fast track repairs will affect the A train in Upper Manhattan starting tonight. A trains will be suspended in both directions between the 168th Street and Inwood 207th Street stations from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. between tonight and this Friday morning. That's Friday the 13th. The MTA will run free shuttle buses on Broadway between the two stations, and you can always take the number 1 train or the M4 bus as an alternative. Well, tonight there will be a chance of rain, lows in the upper 40s. Tomorrow, Tuesday, mostly cloudy with periods of rain and highs in the low 60s. Currently, it is 56 degrees in Inwood at 5:06.
Support for NPR comes from None Such Records, presenting Natalie Merchant's Paradise Is There, the new Tiger Lily recordings. Merchant revisits the songs of her solo debut album in new arrangements. Paradise Is There by Natalie Merchant is available now.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Audie Cornish in Washington, D.C.
And I'm Kelly McEvers in Culver City, California. The man who presided over the University of Missouri system has stepped down. His resignation follows protests over the school's handling of several racially charged incidents. Many students there see today's events as a surprising David and Goliath kind of victory. Frank Morris of member station KCUR reports the ousted president regrets he didn't respond more appropriately.
Racial issues are not new to MU. Connor Lewis, a history grad student here, says just this semester racial slurs were openly hurled at the student body president, who's black, and others. There's also been hateful, racist graffiti.
I think the racial questions at the campus have been particularly simmering for the past year since what occurred in Ferguson. This has been something that has been boiling under the surface for that long.
It was the administration's response to those tensions, viewed by many as slow, even tone-deaf, that played a key role in today's surprising events. In October, protesters stopped Missouri University System President Tim Wolf during the homecoming parade and confronted him over the tension. He declined to engage them and later apologized. Then, a week ago, grad student Jonathan Butler launched a hunger strike. As that dragged on, students set up tents on campus. Some grad students and teachers walked out. Many on the football team went on strike, all calling for Wolf to resign.
Call the meeting to order.
That led to a hastily called meeting of the University of Missouri's Board of Curators. And it didn't take long before there was this announcement.
I'm resigning as president of the University of Missouri system.
Wolf says he's leaving out of love for the university and the state of Missouri. He says he takes racial issues seriously and seemed clearly pained by the turn of events this semester.
It is my belief we stopped listening to each other. We didn't respond or react. We got frustrated with each other, and we forced individuals like Jonathan Butler to take immediate action or unusual steps to effect change. This is not, I repeat, not the way change should come about.
But the change that did come about was joyously celebrated by thousands of protest supporters on campus. Jonathan Butler, the student staging the hunger strike, told CNN that his effort was worth it.
Because we've been fighting as underrepresented students for so long, and to see that there's a clear stance on racism and a clear stance on inequality on campus is huge. I mean, my initial reaction is my body got a little bit more faint because I was just so overwhelmed because of what this truly means.
Organizer Andrea Fulgham says the students still have a long way to go.
So I expect to see this all the time. It does not stop here, okay? We still have policies we have to implement. We don't stop fighting because that's what they want. We have to make sure that we ensure that campus will be okay for everyone.
Protesters say that includes LGBT students and faculty, as well as racial minorities. Clearly, the football team's action had an impact. And students like Brian Lushbaugh learned that sometimes they do have unexpected clout.
I think the times are changing. I think, people aren't afraid to stand up for what they think is right, and I'm speechless, honestly.
So it's a heady day for students who forced both the system president to resign and the university to acknowledge rising tensions over racism on campus. For NPR News, I'm Frank Morris in Columbia, Missouri.
Now to another college campus and another debate about race. This one started with emails. First, a campus-wide message discouraged students at Yale University from wearing culturally insensitive Halloween costumes. Think blackface makeup or feathered headdresses. Then another email from a professor expressing frustration with the costume advice. An open letter accused the professor of erasing the voices of minority students. And today, there were demonstrations.
We out here, we been here, we ain't leaving, we are love, we out here.
Students say Yale administrators aren't listening. Their concerns include incidents of discrimination and low numbers of non-white faculty. Aaron Z. Lewis is a senior at Yale University, and he weighed in on the website Medium. He says it's more than just emails.
I've seen people try to bring this up, trying to make this a campus-wide conversation since I first got here during my freshman year. And I think people are frustrated that it's taken this long for their voices to be heard in any meaningful way. And it's unfortunate that the email about Halloween costumes has become the center of this conversation when it's been going on among students here for far before Erica Christakis even arrived on this campus.
You mentioned this email that in part stoked this controversy from Erica Christakis. She's a faculty member at Yale. And in response to this debate about Halloween costumes, she wrote that free speech and the ability to tolerate offense are the hallmarks of a free and open society. Is it the university's responsibility to protect students from offensive or even hateful speech?
We all agree that free speech is important. And I think we all agree also that racism is bad. These two groups of people do not have to be on different sides. This has become about the tone students are taking as they protest, and everyone will have a different opinion on that. We could go back and forth on that all day long, or we can all acknowledge the issue that's at the heart of this matter, which is the very real racism that students of color, especially women, have experienced here, and try to work together to make it better for them.
Can you describe some of the specific demands of some of these students? I mean, if you look over in Missouri, you saw students at the University of Missouri demand the resignation of the head of the school, something they successfully won. What are students asking for at Yale?
We believe that students here, students of all backgrounds, deserve a more diverse faculty. Another thing is that the Yale president sent out an email to the entire student body last week saying that he was launching an initiative to make Yale a tobacco-free campus. And I think there's no reason that something similar can't happen here with the very serious and legitimate issue of racism.
Is there not an initiative that has been announced, though, that is going to look at diversity of faculty and more?
Yeah, the dean's office actually announced the initiative to increase diversity in faculty, which is great, and we commend that.
You're a senior at Yale. Can you talk about your experience at all? Have you felt discrimination? Have you felt unwelcome?
Well, my dad is black and my mom is white, so I don't actually look black. And fortunately, I haven't had to deal with the same kind of discrimination that people of color, especially women, have. But to me, it doesn't really matter if I've experienced these issues personally. It's my responsibility, and it's everyone's responsibility, to have empathy and take seriously the legitimate concerns that are at the heart of this issue.
Aaron Lewis is a senior at Yale. He wrote the article, What's Really Going On at Yale, for Medium. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
Marco Rubio's bid for the Republican presidential nomination is gaining momentum. And as his standing has improved, the Florida senator is having to answer questions about his personal finances. Again. Over the weekend, Rubio's campaign tried to put some of those questions to rest by releasing old American Express statements. NPR's Greg Allen reports from Miami.
Over a 22-month period, the records show Rubio ran up about $7,200 in personal charges, all of which his campaign says were reimbursed directly to American Express. They're from 2005 and 2006, after Rubio had been designated Speaker of the Florida House. For months, reporters had been requesting the statements. The delayed release led to speculation they contained embarrassing charges. But when they finally were released over the weekend, there were few surprises. Here's what we did find. The largest charge, $3,700 for flooring, what Rubio described in his autobiography as stone pavers. He says he accidentally pulled the wrong credit card from his wallet. $1,700 for a hotel and car rental in Las Vegas when he extended a business trip for personal reasons. Rubio's campaign released the statements after his personal use of the state party credit card became an issue in the race. After Donald Trump said of Rubio, he's a disaster with his credit cards. At the last debate, CNBC's Becky Quick tried to ask Rubio about his finances without success.
In terms of all of that, it raises the question whether you have the maturity and the wisdom to leave a $17 trillion economy. What do you say?
Well, you just listed a litany of discredited attacks from Democrats and my political opponents, and I'm not going to waste 60 seconds detailing them all.
Rubio deflected the question, never explaining why he used the state party credit card for personal expenses. He also didn't offer anything on why a second home he co-owned went into foreclosure, or why after making nearly $1 million with his book and buying a boat, he cashed out a retirement account, paying thousands of dollars in taxes and penalties. This isn't the first time Rubio's credit card has been in the news. It came up in 2010 when he ran for U.S. Senate, but didn't stop him from being elected. Later, the Florida Ethics Commission investigated Rubio's spending and dismissed a complaint against him. Brian Crowley, who edits Florida's Crowley Political Report, says the new records reinforce a portrait of a rising politician without a lot of money who took full advantage of his connections and position.
But I don't think anybody's suggesting that at this point that he did anything particularly wrong.
Crowley says while the credit cards are old news to many Florida reporters, they merit new attention, as do other things like Rubio's close ties to Miami billionaire Norman Brayman.
The relationship that includes his wife getting a job with him, he's his #1 political backer and financial backer. I think Rubio has never been shy about taking advantage of opportunities that come his way. I think he walks the line a little bit.
The latest disclosures appear unlikely to slow Rubio's gathering momentum in the Republican field. In recent weeks, he's moved into third position in polls, behind Ben Carson and Trump. And some of Rubio's support is coming from people who used to support his friend and fellow Floridian, former Governor Jeb Bush. Greg Allen, NPR News, Miami.
You're listening to All Things Considered on WNYC. NYPD officers have been working with an expired contract since August. The union opted to go into binding arbitration last year, and the draft agreement circulated last week includes a 1% raise each year. But coming up next, we'll examine why, even if the agreement is finalized, the union and the city will have to return to the bargaining table. That's coming up next on All Things Considered. Stay tuned.
WNYC support comes from Rutgers University Continuing Education, your lifelong learning partner, offering thousands of professional development courses for career advancement. More information at lifelonglearning.rutgers.edu. Cider Week NYC, presented by Glenwood, November 6th through 15th, offering tastings, classes, and events like Apple Palooza at Astor Center on November 11th. More information is available at ciderweeknyc.com. Flatiron Books, publishers of Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson, a book about embracing everything that makes us who we are, beautiful, flawed, even crazy. Furiously Happy, on sale now.
I didn't want to eat breakfast, and they said, oh, you're on the hunger strike.
1 day in solitary.
I wasn't violent. I didn't say anything, They threw me in the solitary confinement for nothing.
Hear the news from the people who are living it and analysis from reporters you trust. Listen to Morning Edition every day on WNYC.
Tonight it will be cloudy with a chance of rain after midnight. Lows in the upper 40s. Tomorrow, Tuesday, mostly cloudy with periods of rain on and off all day. High of 61. And currently it is 56 degrees in Central Park at 5:20.
Support for NPR comes from WNYC members and from Vonage, offering cloud-based solutions with 40 built-in calling features like video conferencing, virtual mailbox, and work from anywhere at Vonage.com. Vonage, the business of better. And Angie's List, where members can shop and buy services from local businesses, including house cleaners, handymen, landscapers, and remodelers. Learn more at angieslist.com.
This is All Things Considered on WNYC. I'm Jamie Floyd. The Patrolmen's Benevolent Association is angry. The union that represents 24,000 rank-and-file New York City police officers opted to submit part of their expired labor contract to binding arbitration. It was a gamble that had paid off in the past, but not this time. In a draft proposal that's supposed to be finalized by the end of this week, PBA members received the same 1% pay raise as the rest of the uniformed workforce. Joining me now to bring us up to speed and tell us what it means for the de Blasio administration is WNYC City Hall reporter Bridget Bergen. Hey, Bridget.
Hi, Jamie.
So union leaders are clearly upset with the arbitration decision. They protested outside the home of the chair of the state arbitration panel, Howard Edelman. We remember that last week. But more than unhappy, they seem surprised. How can that be?
Well, first of all, it's important to note that both the city and the union agreed on Edelman as the chair of this arbitration panel before things even started. But I've spoken with several rank-and-file police officers. The message they were getting was that the arbitration was going to get them a better deal. And recent history has proven that out. In 3 of the last 4 contracts, the PBA did get a better deal by going through arbitration. Last time it was 4.5% and 5% raises each year of the deal. Then they negotiated 4 years with the city for 4% raises each of those years. That deal expired in 2010, and they've been working with an expired contract since then. Last week, the current chair, Howard Edelman, who you mentioned, circulated a draft decision with 1% raises for the rest of 2010 and 2011. Now, that's in keeping with the pattern for other uniformed services and ranks that the city negotiated last December, and that includes police, fire, sanitation, and correction. I spoke to Roy Richter, head of the union for NYPD captains. He was one of the leaders of the coalition that set that pattern, that negotiated that deal. And he told me he understands why the officers are taking this decision hard.
Whether or not that's surprise and shock is right or wrong, it's surprise and shock. So it doesn't matter who you work for. You can work for a radio station, you can be a CEO of a company. You don't get the increase that you expect in this case and feel you deserve. Of course it affects somebody's work.
Now, Richter said he's got a really good working relationship with the de Blasio administration, and that was helpful as they were negotiating this deal. He has roughly 750 members, so obviously that's a much smaller union than the PBA.
Richter also said there that the deal is affecting officer morale. Are you hearing that too?
Yeah, and of course it's made worse by the 4 officers who were killed in the last 11 months. Both Mayor de Blasio and Commissioner Bratton have been asked this question about officer morale. I asked Commissioner Bratton about it today, in fact, and he really stressed all the ways that the city is trying to invest in the department holistically. You know, he acknowledged that there's frustration over this pay issue, but he talked about the new technology, larger vehicles, capital improvements they're trying to make to precinct houses. You know, they say that they are showing how they support the agency in these other ways. PBA President Pat Lynch has already responded to those comments. He says morale is at rock bottom and that officers believe that the arbitrator was essentially in the city's pocket.
We are talking about labor contracts here. When Bill de Blasio came to office, they were all expired. Where do they stand now?
So the Office of Labor Relations gave an update in September. At that point, 83% of the outstanding contracts were settled. I mean, that's a huge number. And for uniform services, the members are getting 11% raises over 7 years. That's the pattern that I've been talking about. 2 of the largest uniform unions that still don't have contracts, the PBA, the police officers, and COBA, the Correction Officers Benevolent Association. If the pattern holds, they could get 1% raises in the first 2 years of those contracts, likely reaching 11% during the life of the contract, with some potential variation.
So does the PBA have any options left?
They're starting to get very limited. They chose binding arbitration. They can keep up their PR campaign, which they seem to be doing. You know, you might be seeing those newspaper ads in the New York Post. And they can hope to influence the state arbitrator. PBA President Pat Lynch has talked about potential legal challenges, but the state law puts real limits on their options for that. And the thing is, this deal only brings them up to 2012. That means they need to gauge the appetite of their members about how to move forward. I spoke to Maria Doulis of the Citizens Budget Commission, which studies city finances and makes policy recommendations. She says one way the PBA could think about this is this.
Perhaps it is better to sit with the city's leadership, accept the pattern for 7 years, get the members their retro checks, and bring them up to date as quickly as possible, and then set their sights on more aggressively negotiating with the city in the next round.
So she's essentially saying, you know, get them those retro checks from the early years. That's a lump sum that the officers would enjoy. And she notes that this deal that the arbitrator put out isn't, you know, stays within the city's current fiscal plan.
So what should we watch for in the days ahead?
The written decision from the arbitrator, the NYPD numbers to see if there's any evidence of slowdowns. It's something we saw earlier this year after the deaths of some of the police officers, and how other unions are reacting. The FDNY has a contract, but it hasn't been ratified, and correction officers are still in talks, and we know there are some correction officers that are very upset with the city based on some of the reforms that are taking place at Rikers. You know, they still need to reach a deal.
All right, WNYC's Bridget Bergen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over the weekend, people who subscribed to the Sunday New York Times received a little gift with their print edition of the newspaper, a virtual reality viewer. What's that? WNYC's Yasmin Khan has more.
It comes as an unassuming cardboard box, smaller than a brick, that converts into a viewfinder, like a cardboard set of goggles for watching a video produced by the New York Times Magazine.
All right, hold up.
I found Kevin Wilson, who's 17, on Prospect Park West in Brooklyn and asked him to try it.
Hey, this feels really weird and out of focus.
It's a virtual reality project meant to immerse people in the scene. The video can be found on a New York Times app and downloaded to a smartphone. You can get a 360-degree view on your screen, or tuck your phone into the cardboard viewer to feel like you're there. The video accompanies a written magazine article about refugee children, so Wilson is getting a glimpse of their lives.
Oh my gosh. Rocks, rubble, concentrated concrete, cement. Oh, some boy just ran in front of the screen.
Virtual reality is out there. Other media outlets have created projects with this technology. But the New York Times sent this virtual reality viewer to about 1 million subscribers over the weekend, more than 30% of them in the New York City area. Andrew Draper is one of them, and he is not into it.
I'm sick of screens. I mean, I work on screens all day.
I'm trying to figure out ways in which my life can become more analog.
He hasn't tried it yet. He wants to stick to the art of the written article for now. Jake Silverstein, editor-in-chief of the Times Magazine, says virtual reality is meant to add to the narrative writing and still photographs that the magazine produces.
Each one is immersive in a different way.
But it's a different experience to be virtually present on the scene.
I think what happens is you develop a kind of feeling of empathy and a kind of emotional connection to the individuals who are around you.
He says the Times put a lot of thought into the story it chose for the launch, an in-depth look at children displaced by war. The idea is that the content would overshadow flashy technology. Silverstein says he thinks virtual reality is part of the future of journalism, and Al Tompkins agrees. He's senior faculty at the Poynter Institute for Media Studies.
Well, this is all about putting a single image into its total context, its environment, and allowing you to say, what do you want to spend time on? What do you want to linger on?
He says that's good journalism and good business. The Times is planning to release another immersive video in December and more virtual reality content in 2016. For WNYC, I'm Yasmin Khan.